Where's the most painful place to get a tattoo? Well, in this video, I'm going to share with you the different methods for which your skin senses the world, the difference of wounds inflicted and how that affects the pain of the tattoo, the different areas of the body that may or may not hurt more or less. Then I'm going to leave you with some tips on how to make it a more enjoyable process. So our body senses the world in a plethora of different ways, right? But mostly we're interested in how your skin senses the world, right? There's different ways in which we can feel the world with our epidermis, the largest organ of our body. There is the thermoception, where our skin feels the temperature. So like when you're getting that tattoo and they take like a cold towel and they wipe it, you're like, or the rubbing alcohol, right? Incoming cold towel. That's your thermoception. It also can feel the heat from that wound being inflicted. There's the mechanical reception. That's where you can feel the tattoo artist grabbing and pinching your skin, where they're either pulling it taut or pinching it, depending on what they're doing during the process. Then there's the nociception process. That's where your skin feels the pain of the needle penetrating your flesh. That's where we're injecting an ink molecule through your epidermis into that dermis layer. Now it's a combination of all these different senses that come together to create the pain of your tattoo. The sharpness of the needle, the tension of the stretching or pinching, depending on your artist's hand weight. And then there's the cold and temperature sensation, the cold and hot sensations that come from a hot towel or warm skin. Now, everybody's gonna have a different experience when they're getting tattooed, because we also have a plethora of different nerve endings throughout our body, and they vary even in our own body. My right arm's gonna have a different cluster of nerve endings than my left arm. So getting a tattoo on the right side may feel different than the left side. Not to mention, depending on how those receptors communicate with my brain, may be way different than the way that your receptors speak to your brain. That's why we talk about higher and lower tolerances for pain. The initial process of the tattoo is gonna play a major role on the sensation, if it's super painful or not. What I mean by that is I briefly said the weight of someone's hand, the weight of your tattoo artist's hand. Well, have you ever heard that term, heavy-handed? Now, it's not like a bunch of tattoo artists are out there being sadomasochists and they want to hurt you. I don't think. But some tattoo artists require to apply a lot of pressure during the tattoo process to stabilize their hand. They may have a little bit of uneasy hands until they can press down into the tattoo machine to make a nice straight line or some solid fill. It's not always intentional. But also the way that they grasp and touch the area that's being tattooed. Like I said, there's an old school method of where tattoo artists used to grab the underside of the flesh and pull it nice and tight so the outer portion is taut. That hurts, because you can imagine the pinching and the bruising underneath. Nowadays, we utilize just like our forefingers where we stretch the area. But there are some places in the body, no matter how much you try to stretch it with your fingers, it ain't gonna work. You gotta pull that nice and taut. Now also, they may be using a high concentration of a cleanser called green soap during the process, which if it's got a lot of green soap mixture in the bottle, there's a high percentage of alcohol in it. And alcohol on a flesh wound, you know the answer, right? Doesn't feel that great. And then if they're trying to do a lot of tattoo work in a small area, it's a flesh wound. So we think, oh, well, I'm just getting this little tattoo, it ain't gonna be that painful. Honestly, when you're getting a large tattoo, say you're working on a sleeve and you're doing the whole outline, well, you're only spending a small amount of time per area to get the line work on, to get that whole area mapped out. As opposed to doing, say, a concentrated tattoo in one area where you're outlining it, shading it, and coloring it all in this one space. You're continually going into this fresh flesh wound and continually open it, because as soon as you penetrate the epidermis, its job is to start closing back up and healing. If you keep opening, it don't feel that great. Also, we talked a little bit about pain tolerances. Some people have higher or lower pain tolerance. And there's a couple different factors. First off, males and females. Naturally, women are gonna have a higher tolerance for pain because, well, they're able to perform childbirth. I don't know about you guys, but I don't even want to try and pass a gallstone, let alone a watermelon through there. Now, it's also where it is on your body, and depending on how you've treated that body. And what I mean by that is, I've tattooed, well, I think over 16,000 people through my career so far. And every time I've tattooed someone's shins, I can tell whether or not they ever did skateboarding. Those people who like jump up and feel a lot of pain in their shin, well, they probably didn't do a lot of skateboarding. Those who did bash those shins a lot and deaden those nerve endings got used to the sensation of impact there, so the area is less painful. Now there's gonna be areas that are gonna be more sensitive than others just by sheer exposure to the elements. And a good way to imagine that is if you put yourself into a fighting stance. All the areas on the outside are going to be exposed to more abuse, maybe during a fight or from the elements from Earth. But everything on the inside, all these fleshy undersides, are more protected. These areas are going to be more sensitive, a little more sharp, a little more pain, a little more loud in your awareness. But there is a large amount of people that will tell you that anything near a bone will be more painful, meaning any shallow areas. A good example is the elbow, kneecaps, rib cage, right? Sometimes the top part of the shoulder, depending on your muscle's physiology. Because there's not so much muscle and fat tissue underneath, it's pretty much a bone with a little bit of skin over top. Now this then pinches those nerves a little tighter than any other area, making it a little more, again, louder in your awareness. You feel the vibration, the sharpness of the needle can be a little more intense, and more people have complained about those areas closer to bone. Personally, what I think is the worst place, and this is just me subjectively, is my feet, because they were super shallow, meaning the skin is really tight over the metacarpal bones in my feet, and I felt that those were horrible. But that's just me. So how can you mitigate some of this pain? Well, what is pain? Pain is just signals going to your brain. During the tattoo process, it hurts. It excites the fight or flight. You want to get the hell away, but you can't. You don't want to, for one, fight your tattoo artist, because that wouldn't lend a good tattoo. Nor do you want to run away or move too much because, obviously, you don't want to misspell your name or get a cross-eyed portrait. So you have to sit there and accept the pain. Now, when you're sitting there and accepting the pain, your body starts to really produce adrenaline and endorphins. So that way, you can actually sit there and endure it. When you tell your body that it's not a serious wound, that literally we're playing in the first 2 millimeters of your epidermis, then your body starts to numb that area naturally, telling you that, hey, it's not a big deal. They're not stabbing me all the way to the bone. It's just a surface wound. And this makes it a less intense process for you mentally, which then translates into a less intense physical response. But Ben, it just hurts and I don't like feeling all that pain. Well, there are different things that we can utilize to mitigate the pain as well, like lidocaine. There are pre and post numbing agents out there. Pre-numbing agents are where we have you come in and we put a topical lidocaine on your skin and then typically wrap it in some sort of plastic wrap and let it sit for a few hours so it can absorb into the epidermis and cause the sensation of those nerves to deaden. Now, personally, I have not found a great pre-numbing agent that lasts a very long time. The most I've seen is maybe an hour to 2, which by the time you've taken the bandage off, cleaned the area, shaved it, prepped it, placed the stencil, and got started, well, you probably get about 30 minutes of some numbness before you feel the sensation. And then we have lidocaine sprays and foams and such that we can utilize on broken skin. Earlier, I mentioned putting lidocaine on the skin and then putting some sort of plastic wrap around it. That's to help absorb it into your epidermis. If you just throw it on your skin and rub it there, it typically won't absorb very well, unless you have a doctor who's prescribing you some good stuff. But over-the-counter products typically don't have that type of effectiveness. So we typically use a lot of post-numbing sprays and foams, where once you've already opened the skin and there's some wound there, we can place it on there and your body will absorb it much more easily. This can cause those areas to be less painful and a little more numb. Now, it doesn't mean the new stuff will be numb, but it will cause less agitation to the areas that are already been tattooed. And sometimes that's truly what makes or breaks a session, is if you've been tattooed for hours and hours and hours, and for those of you who've been tattooed for hours and hours and hours, sometimes just the touching of the tattoo artist or the wiping that's the worst. But if you can cause those sensitive areas to be less agitated, then the new tattoo sections won't be so bad. Now, caveat, sometimes people go crazy with that stuff. And when there's too much lidocaine on the skin or too many pain managing ointments or products, it can cause the skin to react in such a way that's not optimal. Meaning sometimes the skin can get a little cold and puckered. So the skin is now no longer feeling the sensations, so it gets kind of raised and bumpy. And that's like trying to drive over speed bumps, right? You're gonna imagine trying to do some smooth shading over speed bumps. Doesn't work very well. Not to mention, sometimes the client may not know that it's that painful, and the tattoo artist may work that area too much, causing more of a wound. I personally like to mitigate any sort of pain relief to those who literally just need it. Is it okay to take any sort of pain meds, Ben? Well, honestly, a little bit of ibuprofen, maybe some Tylenol is okay. It depends on your blood type. It depends on your body's physiology. If those types of painkillers could thin your blood too much, could cause an issue with the tattoo. But definitely don't drink a bunch before you get tattooed or take any hard drugs, because no one wants to deal with a drunk drug addict. So what is the most painful place to get tattooed? Overall, let's just say it's anywhere that's protected, those soft fleshy areas that's protected from the elements. Typically there's a higher percentage of pain near the bone areas, and that you can utilize some pain management with some lidocaines and some mild over-the-counter painkillers, but don't go too crazy. Now, I'd love to hear what you think is the most painful place to get tattooed, because what I think hurts, like my feet, may be totally different than what you do. I'll look forward to your comments.